I got out of the hospital. My daughter-in-law met me at the door with her parents and told me. The taxi pulled up to 847 Maple Grove Drive at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember the exact time because I checked my watch 3 times during that ride, each glance a prayer that I was wrong about what I suspected was waiting for me. The pain medication from my hip replacement surgery made everything feel like I was moving through honey, but my mind was sharp enough to know that something was very wrong. My son Kevin's car was in the driveway, so was Tiffany's SUV, and 2 other vehicles I didn't recognize, a new BMW and a Mercedes sedan. On a Tuesday afternoon, when Kevin should have been at work at the accounting firm downtown. The taxi driver, a kind young man named David, helped me out of the back seat. My walker scraped against the concrete as I steadied myself. That's when I saw them. Kevin stood on the porch, my porch, the one I'd swept 10,000 times over 38 years. Tiffany was beside him, her arms crossed, wearing what I can only describe as a victor's smile. And behind them stood her parents, Gerald and Patricia Whitmore, looking at me the way you'd look at a stray dog you were about to call animal control on. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the boxes. 23 cardboard boxes, I counted them later, sitting on my front lawn, my belongings. Photo albums with the corners sticking out, my mother's china wrapped hastily in newspaper, the quilt my grandmother made in 1952 just shoved in a box like garbage. "Mom," Kevin said, and his voice had that tone, that careful, rehearsed tone that told me this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. "We need to talk." I moved my walker forward, each step sending shock waves through my still-healing hip. David, the taxi driver, stayed close, sensing something was wrong. God bless that young man. "What's going on?" I asked, though somewhere deep in my 72-year-old bones, I already knew. Tiffany stepped forward. She actually stepped forward, in front of my own son, to deliver the blow. "Dorothy, you don't live here anymore." 4 words. 4 simple words that tried to erase 38 years of mortgage payments, of scrubbing floors, of turning a house into a home after my husband Robert died. 38 years of birthday parties and Christmas mornings, and teaching Kevin to ride his bike on this very driveway. "Excuse me?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Gerald Whitmore pulled out a folder, a thick legal folder, and Tiffany took it from him like they'd choreographed this whole scene. "You signed power of attorney to Kevin while you were in the hospital," Tiffany said, and now her voice had an edge of excitement, like she couldn't quite hide how much she was enjoying this. "He transferred the deed to the house to us, legally. Also your savings account, all $127,000. The house is ours now. We're selling it. The buyers are coming next week." I looked at my son, my Kevin, the boy I'd raised alone after Robert's heart attack in 1998, the boy I'd put through college, working double shifts at the hospital as a medical secretary, the man I'd lent $15,000 to just last year when his investment opportunity fell through. "Kevin?" My voice broke on his name. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a spot somewhere over my left shoulder and said, "It's done, Mom. We're starting fresh. Tiffany's parents found us a great investment property, and we need the capital. You're going to be fine. We found you a nice assisted living place. It's all arranged." "Assisted living?" I repeated. "Kevin, I just had hip surgery. I'm recovering. I'm not—" "Face it, Dorothy," Tiffany interrupted. And God help me, she actually smirked. "You're old. You can't manage this big house anymore. Kevin and I have been carrying you financially for years." "I paid for your wedding?" The words burst out of me. $12,000! And your honeymoon. And I've been watching Harper and Elijah 3 days a week for free so you could keep working." "That's what grandmothers do," Patricia Whitmore said coolly. "Family helps family. But Kevin and Tiffany have their own family to think about now. It's time for you to accept that you're in the way. In the way. In my own house. The house Robert and I bought in 1987 for $89,000. The house I just refinanced to give Kevin that $15,000 loan. David, the taxi driver, cleared his throat. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you want me to call someone? She's fine, Kevin said quickly. This is a family matter. Doesn't look fine to me, David said, bless him. Looks like an elderly lady being thrown out of her home. We're not throwing her out, Tiffany snapped. We're transitioning her to appropriate care. It's all legal. Show her the papers. Gerald Whitmore stepped forward with another folder. Power of attorney documents, deed transfer papers, bank account closure forms, all with my signature. Except I barely remembered signing anything. The anesthesiologist had come to my room the morning of surgery, and Kevin had been there with, just a few forms, Mom, standard stuff about who can make medical decisions if something goes wrong. I'd been terrified, about to go under the knife at 72, and I'd signed what he put in front of me. I'd signed away my life. You have until 5 p.m. to collect your boxes, Tiffany said. After that, anything left will be donated or trashed. The locksmith is coming at 5:15 to change all the locks. I stood there, 72 years old, 12 days out from major surgery, looking at the ruins of my life piled on my lawn. And something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted. Because here's what they didn't know. I hadn't been just a medical secretary for 32 years. For 10 of those years, I'd worked specifically in the legal department of St. Michael's Hospital. I'd typed up hundreds of power of attorney documents. I knew what they could do and what they couldn't do. And I knew that in the state of Pennsylvania, a power of attorney signed under duress, like when you're medicated before surgery, could be challenged. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. Instead, I looked at my son, the man I'd raised to be better than this, and I said very quietly, "Okay." Tiffany's eyes lit up. She'd expected a fight. My surrender made her bold. The assisted living facility is called Sunset Gardens, she said, pulling out yet another paper. We've already paid for the first month. It's very nice. Bingo on Thursdays. Okay, I repeated. Kevin finally looked at me then, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt? Guilt? It didn't matter. He'd made his choice. David, I said to the taxi driver, could you help me load some of these boxes into your trunk? I'll need to make several trips. Of course, ma'am, but are you sure? I'm sure. We loaded boxes for 45 minutes. Kevin and Tiffany went back inside my house, and left us to it. The Whitmores drove away in their expensive cars, their work here done. David made 3 trips with me to Evelyn Morrison's house on Oakmont Street, my best friend for 23 years. Evelyn, who'd lost her own husband to cancer 5 years ago. Evelyn, who'd been texting me every day during my hospital stay. Evelyn, who'd been helping me prepare for exactly this scenario for the past 2 months. Because here's the thing that Kevin and Tiffany didn't know, the thing that Gerald and Patricia Whitmore with their smug faces and expensive cars didn't know. I had already been planning. They didn't know that this 72-year-old woman had one more card to play. 2 months earlier, the morning walk started when my doctor said I needed to keep my joints mobile before the surgery. Every day at 6 a.m., I'd head to Riverside Park, do 3 loops around the pond, and stop at the bench near the willow trees to rest. That's where I'd met Evelyn Morrison 3 years ago, and that's where our morning routine had become sacred. We'd sit, share a thermos of coffee from my kitchen, and talk about everything, our children, our grandchildren, our lives. It was a Thursday morning in August when everything started to unravel. I just told Evelyn about Kevin asking me to co-sign on a loan for a fantastic business opportunity. Another one? Evelyn had said, her eyebrows rising above her reading glasses. She'd been doing the crossword in the morning paper. Dorothy, didn't you just lend him $15,000 6 months ago? 14 months ago, I corrected. And he said he'd pay me back by June. It's August now, and when I asked about it last week, Tiffany got very defensive. Evelyn set down her pen. How defensive? She said that I should be happy to help my son achieve his dreams, that family doesn't keep score, and that maybe if I'd been better with money, I'd understand investing. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. The morning had a chill despite it being August. Then she mentioned the house. Your house? She said it was ridiculous for one old woman to be hoarding a 4-bedroom house when they were crammed in their 3-bedroom rental. Her exact words. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Dorothy, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm paranoid. Tell me. Margaret Chen from our water aerobics class? Her daughter did something similar. Got Margaret to sign over her house for estate planning purposes. Within 6 months, Margaret was in a nursing home, and the daughter had sold the house and moved to Florida with the money. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Kevin wouldn't— I'm not saying Kevin would, Evelyn interrupted gently. I'm saying Tiffany might. I've seen how she looks at your house, Dorothy. She brings her parents over, shows them around like she already owns it. And last month at Harper's birthday party, I overheard Patricia Whitmore telling someone that their daughter was finally getting what she deserved after years of dealing with Kevin's mother. I'd known that Tiffany's parents didn't like me. Patricia had made it clear from the engagement party that she thought her daughter was marrying beneath her. Kevin was an accountant at a good firm, but he wasn't making the kind of money that would satisfy the Whitmores' vision for their princess daughter. But I'd thought Kevin and I were solid. I'd raised him alone. We were a team. What should I do? I asked Evelyn. She pulled out her phone. Yes, we 70-something-year-olds have smartphones, thank you very much, and opened her WhatsApp. I'm in a group with 8 other women from the community center. All of us between 65 and 78. 4 of them have dealt with financial exploitation from their children. Let me tell you what they learned. That morning, sitting on that bench under the willow tree, Evelyn introduced me to a world I'd never wanted to know existed. Elder financial abuse. It happened in 1 out of every 10 families. Children who felt entitled to their parents' assets, who saw their aging parents not as people, but as obstacles to inheritances. The first thing, Evelyn said, is you need to see a lawyer. Not Kevin's friend, not the family lawyer, your own lawyer. Someone he doesn't know about. That seems so smart, Evelyn finished. Dorothy, I love you like a sister, and I hope I'm wrong about Kevin. But better to have protection you don't need than need protection you don't have. 2 days later, I had an appointment with Robert Chen, no relation to Margaret Chen, though they'd met through the same situation. Robert Chen specialized in elder law, and his office was in Harrisburg, far enough from Willow Creek that nobody I knew would see me going in. His office was on the 3rd floor of a building on Market Street. Robert Chen was 56, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. His walls were covered with certifications and photos with elderly clients. Mrs. Morrison called ahead, he said after his secretary brought us tea. She explained some of your concerns. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the $15,000 loan that hadn't been repaid, about Tiffany's comments about the house, about Kevin's increasing requests for money, $300 here for Harper's school supplies, $500 there for car repairs, $800 for an emergency dental bill that I later learned never happened because I saw Kevin's dental records at the house showing his last appointment was 2 years ago. I told him about my assets, $127,000 in savings from Robert's life insurance and my pension, the house worth approximately $340,000 according to the last assessment, and my monthly pension of $2,400. Mr. Chen took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Bennett, he finally said, I'm going to be very direct with you. You're showing several red flags for pre-exploitation grooming. Pre-exploitation grooming? It's a pattern. The adult child begins with small requests for money, normalizing the parent's role as a financial resource. Then the requests escalate. Comments are made about the parent's assets being wasted or about the child deserving compensation for care they're providing. The parent is isolated from other family members or friends who might question the dynamic. And finally, the adult child makes a move to gain legal control over the parent's finances. My hands shook around my teacup. What kind of move? Power of attorney is the most common. They'll wait for a vulnerable moment, a hospital stay, a health scare, a moment of confusion, and they'll present papers to sign. Once they have power of attorney, they can access bank accounts, sell property, and make financial decisions in your name. That's legal? If the power of attorney is properly executed, yes, but there are protections. The key is acting now, before they make their move. He spent the next hour explaining what we could do. I could set up a revocable living trust with a corporate trustee, meaning no individual family member could access my assets without approval. I could add specific language to any power of attorney limiting what decisions could be made. I could move my savings to a bank account Kevin didn't know about. But here's what I strongly recommend, Mr. Chen said, leaning forward. Don't do anything yet. If you suddenly change everything, they'll know you're suspicious, and they'll accelerate their timeline. Instead, I want you to document everything. Keep a journal of every conversation, every request for money, every comment about your assets. Record conversations if Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, which it is. Meaning, you can record any conversation you're part of without telling the other person. Record my own son? Document your protection, Mrs. Bennett. If I'm wrong and Kevin's intentions are pure, you'll have nothing to worry about. But if I'm right, you'll have evidence. I walked out of Robert Chen's office with a small digital recorder he'd given me, a journal with instructions on what to document, and a sick feeling in my stomach. But I also walked out with something else. A plan. Over the next 6 weeks, I documented everything. I recorded a conversation where Tiffany told me I was selfish for not giving them $25,000 to invest in Gerald Whitmore's commercial real estate scheme. I wrote down the date and time when Kevin borrowed $800 from my purse and never mentioned paying it back. I saved a text message where Tiffany said, "Your house is too big for you anyway. We could actually use the space." I also joined Evelyn's WhatsApp group. 9 women, all between 65 and 78, all dealing with or having dealt with financial abuse from family members. We called ourselves the Silver Warriors, and we met every Wednesday at the library for what anyone watching would think was a book club. But we weren't discussing novels. We were discussing estate law, financial protection, and how to love our children while also protecting ourselves from them. Margaret Chen had successfully sued her daughter and gotten her house back, but the legal battle had taken 3 years and $47,000 in attorney fees. Susan Rodriguez had cut off her son entirely after he stole $200,000 from her retirement account. Linda Washington had gotten a restraining order against her daughter after the daughter tried to have her declared incompetent so she could take control of Linda's assets. These weren't strangers in news stories. These were women I did water aerobics with, women I saw at the grocery store, women whose grandchildren went to school with mine. The key, Margaret told us at one meeting, is having evidence. The courts want to believe adult children are acting in their parents' best interest. You need to prove otherwise. I went home from that meeting and called my doctor's office. I requested copies of all my medical records. I wanted documentation that I was of sound mind, that I wasn't confused or mentally incapacitated. I was 72 years old, but my last cognitive assessment, done as part of my pre-surgery workup, showed I was sharp as ever. Then I did something that felt like the ultimate betrayal of a mother. I hired a private investigator. His name was Thomas Brewster, recommended by Mr. Chen. He was 63, a former police detective who now specialized in financial crimes. He charged $125 an hour, and he was worth every penny. "I need you to look into my son and daughter-in-law's finances," I told him at our first meeting, held at a Starbucks 30 minutes from Willow Creek. I need to know if they're in financial trouble, if they're desperate enough to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "To exploit you," Thomas said gently. "Mrs. Bennet, I've been doing this for 15 years. You're not the first mother to sit across from me with this request. And you won't be the last. It doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you a careful one." Within 2 weeks, Thomas had a report. Kevin and Tiffany were $67,000 in credit card debt. They'd taken out a second mortgage on their rental property that they'd somehow convinced their landlord to allow, which made no legal sense, and Thomas suspected fraud. They'd invested $40,000 in Gerald Whitmore's commercial real estate scheme, which Thomas's research showed was on the verge of collapse. They were desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. "There's more," Thomas said, sliding another paper across the table. "Tiffany's been researching assisted living facilities. I found her search history. Yes, I have contacts who can get that information. She's specifically been looking at facilities that accept long-term Medicaid patients." "Medicaid?" I repeated. "But I have savings. I have my own money." "Exactly. Medicaid only pays for long-term care if you have less than $2,000 in assets. She's planning to spend down your money, Mrs. Bennet. Get you into a Medicaid facility where you'll be stuck, where they'll have complete control." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. This wasn't just about the house. This was about taking everything, about putting me away somewhere and forgetting I existed. "What do I do?" I whispered. "You prepare," Thomas said. "Because I've seen this pattern before. They're going to make their move soon, when you're vulnerable, probably around your surgery." The surgery was scheduled for September 18th, a full hip replacement, outpatient recovery, home the same day if all went well. Kevin had insisted on being there, on being my emergency contact, on handling all the paperwork. I'd agreed because I'd wanted to believe I was wrong. I'd wanted to believe that my son, the boy I'd raised to be honest and kind, wouldn't actually do what Thomas and Mr. Chen thought he would do. The morning of the surgery, Kevin showed up at my house at 5:30 a.m. He was cheerful, helpful, attentive. He made me tea. He helped me into the car. He held my hand in the pre-op room. And then the anesthesiologist came with the consent forms. "Just standard stuff, Mom," Kevin said, putting papers in front of me. "Medical power of attorney so I can make decisions if something goes wrong during surgery. You know, just in case." My hands were shaking. From fear of the surgery. From medication they'd already given me to relax. From the knowledge that this was the moment Thomas had predicted. I signed the papers, but I read them first, even through the medication fog. And I saw what Kevin had tried to slip past me, not just medical power of attorney, but full financial power of attorney. The right to access my bank accounts, sell my property, make any financial decision in my name. I signed it anyway, because I'd already been to the bank the week before. I'd transferred $125,000 of my $127,000 in savings to a new account at a different bank, an account Kevin knew nothing about. I'd left only $2,000 in the old account, enough that it wouldn't look suspicious, not enough to be worth stealing. I'd also stopped by Mr. Chen's office and filed paperwork with the county recorder's office. A notice of my intent to challenge any property transfers made under power of attorney signed under duress. The surgery went fine. I woke up groggy, in pain, but alive. Kevin was there, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. 3 days later, when I was being discharged, he helped me pack my hospital bag. He was so attentive, so caring. He kept calling me Mom in that sweet way he used to when he was little. And then we got to my house, and Tiffany was there with her parents and the boxes on the lawn. Evelyn's house smelled like lavender and fresh bread. She opened the door before David and I could even knock, having clearly been watching from the window. "Oh, Dorothy," she said, and pulled me into a hug, careful of my healing hip. "They actually did it." "They did it," I confirmed. David helped carry the last boxes inside, I tried to tip him, but he refused.
"Ma'am, what I just witnessed?"
he said.
"That wasn't right. If you need someone to testify about what happened today, you call this number." He handed me his card. "My grandmother went through something similar. I won't charge you for the testimony."
After he left, Evelyn made tea, and I sat at her kitchen table and finally let myself cry. Not hysterical sobs, just quiet tears for the relationship with my son that I'd apparently only imagined existed. "Did you record it?" Evelyn asked after a few minutes. I pulled out my phone. The whole confrontation was there, crystal clear audio. Tiffany saying I didn't live there anymore. Kevin confirming he'd used the power of attorney to transfer the deed. Gerald Whitmore's comment about me being in the way. "Good," Evelyn said. "Now we fight back." My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. "Mom, I'm sorry it had to be this way, but you'll see. Sunset Gardens is really nice. We'll visit on Sundays." I didn't respond. Instead, I called Mr. Chen. "They made their move," I said when he answered. "Just like you predicted." "Tell me everything," he said, and I could hear him pulling out a legal pad. I told him. Every detail. The timeline, the boxes, the threats, the smug faces of Tiffany and her parents. When I finished, Mr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to file an emergency motion first thing Monday morning to void the power of attorney on grounds of undue influence and mental incapacity due to pre-surgical medication. I'm also filing a motion to freeze all transfers of your assets and a restraining order preventing them from selling the house. And I'm reporting this to Adult Protective Services as suspected elder abuse. How long will it take? For the emergency motions, we'll have a hearing by Wednesday. The judge will almost certainly grant a temporary freeze. The larger battle of getting your house and money back could take months, but Dorothy, we're going to win this. They got greedy, and they moved too fast. That recording you got today, that's going to be devastating for their case." After I hung up, Evelyn poured me more tea and said, "You know what we're going to do tomorrow?" "What?" "We're going to Riverside Park for our walk, and we're going to sit on our bench, and we're going to tell the Silver Warriors what happened." "Because you're not alone, Dorothy. You have an army behind you." The next morning at 6 a.m., I made my way slowly with my walker to Riverside Park. My hip ached, but Mr. Chen had told me documentation of my recovery and mobility would help prove I didn't need assisted living. Evelyn was there, and so were 7 other women from our group. They'd all come early, giving up their Saturday morning sleep to sit with me. Margaret Chen handed me a coffee. I brought croissants from the French bakery. Nothing says planning legal warfare like good pastry. We sat on the benches near the willow tree, 9 women between 65 and 78, and we made a plan. Susan Rodriguez, who'd worked as a paralegal before retirement, helped me organize all my documentation. Linda Washington, who'd been a journalist, helped me write a timeline of events that Mr. Chen could use. Margaret Chen, who'd been through this herself, talked me through what to expect in court. But it was Evelyn who said the thing I needed to hear most. "Dorothy, you raised that boy. You gave him everything. And what he's doing now? That's not your failure as a mother. That's his failure as a son. You get to be angry about this. You get to fight back. And you don't have to feel guilty about it." Permission to be angry. Permission to fight back. Permission to not feel like a bad mother for protecting myself from my own child. I'd needed to hear that more than I'd known. Monday morning at 9 a.m., Mr. Chen filed our emergency motions. By noon, Kevin's phone was blowing up. I knew this because he called me 17 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails. "Mom, what did you do? Mom, we got served with court papers. Mom, you're making a huge mistake. Mom, please, let's talk about this." Tiffany left different voicemails. "You spiteful old woman, we're going to fight this. You're going to pay our legal fees when we win. Kevin is devastated that you'd betray him like this." I saved every voicemail. More evidence. Tuesday morning, I got a call from Adult Protective Services. A social worker named Jennifer Wu wanted to meet with me. She came to Evelyn's house that afternoon, a kind woman in her 40s with a gentle manner and sharp eyes. "Mrs. Bennett, I need you to walk me through exactly what happened," she said. I did. I showed her the recording. I showed her the text messages. I showed her Thomas Brewster's financial report. I showed her my medical records proving my mental competency. Jennifer Wu took notes, her expression growing darker as I talked. "Mrs. Bennett," she said when I finished, "this is one of the clearest cases of elder financial abuse I've seen. I'm going to recommend immediate investigation. The district attorney's office may get involved. What your son and daughter-in-law did isn't just a civil matter. It could be criminal." Criminal. My son could face criminal charges. Part of me felt sick. Part of me felt vindicated. All of me felt tired. Wednesday morning was the emergency hearing. Mr. Chen picked me up at 8:30 a.m. Kevin, Tiffany, and their lawyer, some friend of Gerald Whitmore's who specialized in real estate law, not elder abuse cases, were already in the courtroom. Kevin looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His suit was wrinkled. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away.
Judge Patricia Hendricks was in her 60s, a no-nonsense woman with reading glasses on a chain. She reviewed our motions, listened to the recording I'd made, and examined the power of attorney documents. Then she looked at Kevin's lawyer and said, "Counsel, your client obtained power of attorney from a 72-year-old woman who was medicated before major surgery, and he used it within days to transfer her house and drain her savings account. Explain to me how that's not undue influence." Kevin's lawyer stammered something about proper procedures being followed, about the documents being legally executed. Judge Hendricks cut him off. "I'm granting Mrs. Bennett's emergency motions in full. All asset transfers are frozen. The power of attorney is void pending a full hearing. Mr. Bennett, you are prohibited from selling that house, accessing your mother's accounts, or having any contact with your mother except through attorneys. If you violate this order, you'll be held in contempt. We'll have a full hearing in 30 days. Until then, Mrs. Bennett, you'll have access to your home with a police escort to retrieve your belongings." Kevin stood up. "Your Honor, please, this is all a misunderstanding." "Sit down, Mr. Bennett," Judge Hendricks said coldly. "I've been on the bench for 22 years. I know elder abuse when I see it. You're lucky your mother is only seeking civil remedies right now. If I were her, I'd be pressing criminal charges. 30 days, counselors. Make good use of them." We walked out of that courtroom, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. That afternoon, accompanied by 2 police officers and Mr. Chen, I walked back into my house for the first time since they'd thrown me out. Kevin and Tiffany were there packing their own belongings. The house was a mess. They'd clearly been living there, treating it like their own. My wedding photos were gone from the mantel. My furniture had been moved around. They'd even painted the guest room without asking me. "You have 1 hour to remove your things," Officer Martinez told them. "Mrs. Bennett has full access to her home effective immediately." Tiffany started to argue, but her lawyer, who'd followed us there, whispered something sharp in her ear. She shut up. I walked through my house slowly, my walker squeaking on the hardwood floors Robert and I had refinished in 1995. I touched the walls, the counters, the windowsills. This was my home. These were my memories. And I'd almost lost all of it. In the master bedroom, my bedroom, where I'd slept next to Robert for 18 years until the heart attack took him, I found something that made my blood run cold. A brochure for Sunset Gardens, but not the glossy welcome brochure. This was an internal document showing pricing. And someone, Tiffany, I assumed, based on the handwriting, had done calculations in the margins. "Mom's money divided by monthly rate equals 14 months max," she'd written. "Then Medicaid. Gerald says once she's on Medicaid, we can't be held financially responsible. Perfect." 14 months. They'd calculated exactly how long my $127,000 would last. And then they'd planned to dump me in a Medicaid facility. I took photos of the document with my phone and handed it to Mr. Chen. "This,"
he said.
"is going to make our case very easy."
Kevin tried to approach me as they were leaving. "Mom, please let me explain." "Don't," I said. "Don't say a word to me. Talk to my lawyer." He left crying. Tiffany left furious. And I stood in my living room, alone for the first time in 2 weeks, and I breathed. The next 30 days were a blur of depositions, document reviews, and meetings with Mr. Chen. Thomas Brewster continued investigating and found even more damning evidence. Emails between Tiffany and her parents discussing how to handle the Dorothy problem. Text messages about finding buyers for my house before they'd even taken it from me. Bank records showing they'd already spent $8,400 of my money on a vacation to Hawaii. But here's what Kevin and Tiffany didn't know. What nobody except Mr. Chen, Thomas Brewster, and the Silver Warriors knew. It wasn't just about me anymore. You see, while Thomas was investigating Kevin's finances, he found something interesting. Gerald Whitmore's commercial real estate scheme, the one Kevin and Tiffany had invested $40,000 in, was actually a pattern. Gerald had been doing this for years, targeting older investors through their adult children. He'd take their money, promise huge returns, and the investments would mysteriously fail while Gerald walked away with the cash. Thomas found 12 other families, 12 other elderly people who'd lost their savings to Gerald Whitmore's schemes, all through their own children who thought they were making smart investments. "This is bigger than just your case," Thomas told me 3 weeks before the full hearing. "This is systematic fraud. I've contacted the FBI. They're interested." The FBI. My little case about getting my house back had accidentally uncovered a criminal enterprise. I called an emergency meeting of the Silver Warriors. We met at Evelyn's house, all 9 of us, and I told them what Thomas had found. "How many of you," I asked, "have heard about Gerald Whitmore? Or been approached about his investment opportunities?" 4 hands went up. "Did any of you invest?" Margaret Chen nodded slowly. "My daughter bought into his medical office building scheme last year. $50,000. I've seen nothing back." "Me too," Linda Washington said. "Different scheme, same man. $35,000 into a retail development that never happened." We looked at each other, 9 elderly women who'd been dismissed, underestimated, and stolen from by people who were supposed to love us or at least respect us. "We're going to take him down," I said. "All of us, together." And that's exactly what we did. The full hearing was scheduled for October 29th, but before we got there, several things happened. First, the FBI showed up at Gerald and Patricia Whitmore's house with a search warrant. They seized computers, financial records, and documents related to at least 15 investment schemes. Second, Adult Protective Services filed their report recommending that Kevin and Tiffany be investigated for elder abuse and financial exploitation. The district attorney's office opened a criminal investigation. Third, Thomas Brewster brought me something I'd asked him to find. Records of every time Kevin had borrowed money from me over the past 5 years. It totaled $43,700. Not 1 penny had been paid back. Fourth, and this is my favorite part, the Silver Warriors organized a press conference. We stood outside the courthouse, 9 women in our 60s and 70s dressed in our Sunday best, and we told our stories. Margaret Chen talked about her daughter stealing her house. Linda Washington talked about her daughter draining her retirement account. Susan Rodriguez talked about her son forging her signature on loan documents. And I talked about Kevin and Tiffany, about the boxes on the lawn, about being told I was in the way in my own home. The local news picked it up. Then the regional news. Then, because the FBI investigation into Gerald Whitmore connected to so many families across 3 states, the national news. We became a story. Elderly women fight back against family financial abuse. The Silver Warriors take on elder exploitation. How one mother's lawsuit uncovered a multi-state fraud scheme. Kevin's employer saw the news. He was suspended pending an internal investigation. Apparently, clients don't trust their money to accountants who steal from their own mothers. Tiffany's employer saw the news. She was fired immediately. She worked in a nursing home, and the optics of her exploiting an elderly person were too toxic. The Whitmore's friends saw the news. Patricia and Gerald became social pariahs in their exclusive country club set. By the time we got to the full hearing, Kevin's lawyer wanted to settle. My clients are willing to return the house, pay restitution for the money spent, and agree to a no-contact order, he told Mr. Bai Chen in a pre-hearing meeting. Not enough, Mr. Chen said. Here are our terms. Full return of the house with all original furnishings replaced or reimbursed. Full restitution of all $127,000 plus interest. Repayment of the $43,700 in loans over the past 5 years. Payment of all Mrs. Bennett's legal fees and investigation costs. A public apology. And they both agreed to participate in the FBI's investigation into Gerald Whitmore. Kevin's lawyer looked like he'd been punched. That's over $200,000. That's justice, Mr. Chen said. Or we can go to trial and I'll add punitive damages. Your choice. They settled. All of it. Everything. On November 15th, I walked back into my house, fully mine again, and I sat on my couch and I cried. But this time, I cried from relief. The aftermath took months to fully unfold. The FBI built their case against Gerald Whitmore, and in March, he was indicted on 17 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and elder abuse. Patricia was indicted as an accomplice. They went to trial in June and were both convicted. Gerald got 15 years in federal prison. Patricia got 8. Kevin and Tiffany lost everything. Their house went into foreclosure. Kevin lost his CPA license. Tiffany couldn't find work in healthcare anymore. They filed for bankruptcy. Part of me felt terrible about this. Part of me remembered Kevin at 7 years old, losing his first tooth, so excited to show me. Kevin at 17, graduating high school, hugging me and saying, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." But then I'd remember Kevin at 40, standing on my porch, refusing to meet my eyes while his wife told me I didn't live in my own home anymore. People ask me if I forgave him. The answer is complicated. I got an email from Kevin in December. His lawyer forwarded it because he wasn't allowed direct contact per the restraining order. It was long, rambling, full of excuses and justifications. But buried in the middle was one sentence. I know I destroyed everything, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope someday you can understand that I wasn't trying to hurt you. I read that line 10 times, and I realized that's the problem. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He just didn't care if he did. To him, to Tiffany, to Gerald and Patricia, I wasn't a person with feelings and rights. I was a resource to be extracted. That's what elder abuse is. It's not just about money. It's about being seen as a thing instead of a person. I didn't respond to the email, but I didn't delete it either. Maybe someday, years from now, when the wound isn't so fresh, I'll have words for what I want to say to my son. But that day isn't today. Today is Monday, May 5th, and I'm sitting on my bench in Riverside Park with Evelyn and the rest of the Silver Warriors. We still meet here every morning at 6 a.m., and now we're something of a local legend. People stop to say hello, to thank us for speaking out, to tell us their own stories of financial abuse. We've started a nonprofit. It's called the Silver Warriors Project, and we help elderly people document abuse, connect with lawyers, and fight back against exploitation. We've helped 43 families in the past 6 months. 43 elderly people who might have lost everything if they hadn't known they could fight back. My house is mine again. All mine. I've changed the locks. Good locks, expensive ones. I've updated my will with a new lawyer, and I've set up a trust that no individual person can access. When I die, my assets will go to Harper and Elijah, my grandchildren, held in trust until they're 30. Kevin won't see a penny. I miss those kids. Harper is 7 now. Elijah is 5. I haven't seen them since the day on the porch. Kevin's supervised visitation doesn't include me. but I've set up college funds for them, accounts Kevin and Tiffany can't touch. Maybe someday, when they're older, I'll get to know them again. Or maybe not. That's not up to me. The money I got back from Kevin and Tiffany, all $170,700 of it after the loans were repaid, I split in half. Half went to the Silver Warriors project. Half is sitting in my new bank account, secure, protected, mine. I'm 73 now. My hip is fully healed. I take the same walks every morning. I have coffee with Evelyn every afternoon. I volunteer at the library on Tuesdays. I live my life the way I want to live it. In the house I spent a lifetime building, surrounded by friends who actually value me. And every night before I go to sleep, I walk through my house, through every room, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. And I whisper, "You're mine. They tried to take you, but you're mine." Am I happy? That's a complicated question. I'm alive. I'm independent. I'm safe. I'm fighting to protect other people from what almost happened to me. Is that happiness? Maybe it's something better. Maybe it's purpose. Last week, I got a letter from Kevin. A real letter, handwritten, sent through his lawyer to get around the no-contact order. It was shorter this time. Just 3 sentences. "Mom, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me." I've read it 100 times. I don't know what to do with it. Evelyn says I don't have to do anything with it, that it's okay to just let it sit, that forgiveness isn't something I owe anyone, not even my own son. The Silver Warriors say I should trust my gut. If my gut says forgive him, do it. If it says don't, don't. My gut says, I don't know yet. Maybe I never will. But here's what I do know. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And more than that, I'm a warrior. They tried to make me disappear. They tried to make me small, invisible, disposable. Instead, they made me strong. Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? Sometimes I wonder if younger people understand what it's like to be treated as invisible in your own family. To have the people you raised, the people you sacrificed everything for, look at you and see only dollar signs. To realize that your value to them ended the moment you couldn't give them anything more. I raised my son to be better than this. I thought I'd taught him integrity, compassion, respect. Maybe I did teach him those things, and he chose to forget them. Or maybe I never really knew him at all. Either way, I survived. And I made sure that other people like me, other elderly parents who loved too much and trusted too easily, would have someone fighting in their corner. The Silver Warriors Project has a hotline now. Any elderly person who suspects they're being exploited can call, day or night, and talk to someone who's been there. Someone who understands. Someone who'll help them fight back. Last month, a 78-year-old woman called from Pittsburgh. Her daughter had moved into her house temporarily 3 years ago and was now refusing to leave. The daughter had taken over the bank accounts. The daughter had sold the woman's car. The daughter was making her feel crazy for objecting to any of it. We connected her with a lawyer. We helped her document everything. We walked her through the same process I went through. 2 weeks ago, she called me back. She'd gotten her house back. Her daughter was gone. She was free. "Thank you," she said, crying. "Thank you for showing me it was possible." That's why I tell my story, not for sympathy, not for revenge, but so that every elderly person who's being told they're too old, too weak, too much of a burden will know. You don't have to accept that. You can fight back. You can win. You have more power than they want you to believe. Use it.